Good day, everybody, and welcome to today's episode on my YouTube video series talking about retirement topics in Malaysia, Johor Bahru, and also property investment across Singapore and especially in Johor Bahru, Malaysia. Now, today's topic, interesting one, it relates to Singapore as well as JB. It's important for both countries, and the topic is why Singapore's population hit 6 million, 6 million, and will continue to grow, right? In case you guys been watching the papers, right, the Singapore government shared that Singapore population hit 6.04 million as of June 2024 this year, right? That is a 2% rise from last year, right? And actually, most of the growth come from non-residents, right? That means from workers coming to work to Singapore, right? I think that one went up by 5%. So actually today, if you say Singapore has 6 million people, it's the first time I think we crossed 6 million. Normally Singapore's around 5.6, 5.7. So at 6 million people, it means that every three people you see in Singapore, right, every three, right, one person is actually a foreigner. I think which is quite understandable now. I think if you walk across the streets of Singapore very often or in the MRT, you do realize there are a lot of foreigners about. So one in three is a foreigner, is nothing, is quite normal, I guess, right? So it's not a citizen, right? And by this growth rate, they predict that the Singapore population will hit 6.4 million by 2030, which is another only 6 years from now, right? So another 6 years from now, we hit 6.4 million, right? And some of you may remember that actually 11 years ago, the Singapore government actually had a white paper that said that Singapore, that tried to do a projection, right, whether Singapore can hit 6.9 million by 2030. I try and find a screenshot and show you here. Okay, so that was actually 10 years ago. So we are not at 6 million, we are on the way there, right? Whether we hit 6.4 or 6.9 million actually is not really important to me. But I think it's important to understand why the population is going up, right? And why it will remain high, and why that is good for our properties both in Singapore and Malaysia. So some things to share which are quite important for you to understand is that actually the Singapore population is aging, right? Today is June, I think almost 20% of the population in Singapore, citizen population, not even population, citizens. I mean, out of the 3+ million Singapore citizens, almost 20% are aged 65 and above. Yeah, 65. Okay, 65 effectively means you retire already. Like, there are very few people still working at 65, right? So 20% or 1 in 5 Singapore citizens are not PR, is a retiree. That's a lot. That's quite high, right? And this in compared to 12% 10 years ago, and this age group is rising and rising fast. So that's why I realized maybe that's one reason why my retirement topics in my YouTube are getting a lot of views recently, because there's really a lot of people retired or planning for retirement because the age is getting there, right? And this is one thing. So what that means is that for Singapore populations, that as many people age, right, we need people to, they're not working, right? So out of the 5 citizens, one is already not working, right? So you need to replace the working population, right? Number two is births are down, right? So basically, citizen births means Singaporean citizens are having less babies for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, but this is a common problem, not just in Singapore, but many advanced big cities, right? Even Tokyo, I covered this other videos, Tokyo, even New York, right? In the big cities, births tend to be lower, right? But population come from other parts of the world, right? Other parts of the country, right? So in Singapore's case, there's not really other parts of the country, right? Because Singapore's only an island, right? So people have to come outside, right? But because births are low, so total fertility rate is low. It's below 1 now, which means the average Singaporean couple, right? Each couple only produce one child. So two produce one, so you can imagine not enough new citizen, so need to import, right? And this leads to the issue recently, Ho Ching, right, the wife of former Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, right, she put on Facebook post which was quite interesting. So in her Facebook post, basically she said, as more of our parents and grandparents age, we need more caregivers and helpers. Yeah, that's understandable. As we build the city and prepare for rising seas and fiercer storms because of global warming, we need more workers, from construction workers to architects and engineers. As we have less children, we need more people from elsewhere to join us to keep this city functioning, for repairing train tracks through the night, to serving patients in hospitals through the night. And she talked about then how we can build Singapore better to possibly accommodate a population of 8 to 10 million in the future. Now, of course, Madam Ho Ching is also technically retired, and Madam Ho Ching is actually technically not part of the ruling government. Okay, so maybe we shouldn't take her comments out of into too seriousness too much. But she just raised a point which I think the Singapore government or PAP is actually a very practical people, right? If there are not enough citizens being born, right? So we need to import people. I don't know how, right? You need to keep the economy growing. So as I mentioned in some of my other videos, right? Increasing population and you get talent from elsewhere, from other countries, right? Will help with GDP growth, right? Help with economic growth, because you need workers, ma. And as the people age, right? Because more and more Singaporean citizens become retired, right? You need more people to replace them, right? To do their jobs, right? And these people have to come from elsewhere because not enough babies are being born, right? So that means importing more people and more talent and more people into Singapore. When we hit 6 million, means that property prices in Singapore will remain stable or trend higher, right? And that is good for property owners, which is why I've always said that if you have an opportunity to buy property, you should buy as soon as possible, as young as possible, right? Whatever you can buy, right? Whatever you can afford, right? You buy whatever you can afford, be it the BTO or HDB resale, or even a property in JB, right? Because as I said, JB is a proxy for Singapore, right? You buy as early as you can because population will grow, right, in Singapore and JB, right? And it's also to balance off the supply, because as you know, Singapore, there's a lot of new supply coming this year, next year, for next 2 3 years, I think. There'll be a lot of incoming supply, so population growth will help to keep property prices stable, because the Singapore government also don't want property prices to fall, or if to fall, they will not fall by a lot. So the Singapore government cannot afford like the prices to drop 10 20%, because that will destroy a lot of citizen wealth. So population import is also necessary, right? So like it or not, right, Singapore, like many big cities in the world, London, New York, Tokyo, they prioritize talent, right? And a working age population, right? So of course, if you are a retired citizen, they cannot get rid of you, right? Because you're still a citizen, and they must, you have contributed to society, and they can, so they will still you will still be there. But I mean, to replace you, if they cannot have enough citizens, they will import lah. So talent import is important, right, to Singapore, and that's why Singapore population will grow. Unfortunately, if you are a retiree, it means that Singapore living costs will be high, because 6 million people packed into an island means that costs will be high. And Singapore's an island, right? So there's no rural or kampong area for you to run to reduce your costs, right? Like what happened in bigger countries like US, right? You once you retire, you can move to a rural area for your retirement, right? But in Singapore, there's no rural area. Maybe JB, like JB is considered a bit more rural. That's why JB is very popular now for retirees, right? Or if you are not skilled a worker in Singapore, or you have the wrong skills, right? Singapore government also don't value you. That's why Singapore government keep encouraging Singaporean citizens to reskill into the right skills. Because Singapore government is run like a big company, right? So if you got the wrong skill, then bo pian, right? No choice. So government don't cherish you, right? So you have to reskill, right? Um, yeah, so it means that the good news is that Singapore property prices remain high, right? So be happy if you're an owner, right? Or as I mentioned earlier, try to get on the property ladder as soon as you can. So this is the reasons why I'm still a big believer of buying property in the end, right? Buying in places like Singapore, right, or Johor Bahru by proxy, right? Because population here will grow, right? And this news that Singapore population hit 6 billion is just a validation of the fact that property will remain an important asset class in the years to come. So I hope that was useful. If you like my short ramble on this topic, right, do like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and share with your family and friends. And we'll talk more about other property topics when the time is right. Thank you very much. Hope to see you guys soon, and bye bye.